Hey, this is Derek Murphy. I want to make a quick video about the topic of betrayal. This came up in one of my writing groups where someone asked, how do you even do betrayal? Or it was something like, why do you do betrayal in writing? And at first I kind of blew it off because it seemed like one of those fishing for permission posts where sometimes people don't appreciate a certain thing, so they want to say, why is it needed? Why can't I just not do it at all? So I wasn't going to respond, but then I thought it's actually a pretty good topic. I don't think I've really explored in my writing resources before. So I'm going to give you 3 simple ways to put betrayal in your novels and why you really should. Basically, this is one of the best ways to make a twist happen. Your action's always going to be predicated on character motivation. So one of your main characters is going to do something that screws up the plan for the protagonist, or possibly side with the antagonist. And if you do it well, it can be a really powerful source of conflict and drama because it's not just this fight with the villain, it's a fight with someone you love and trust. That's where the betrayal comes from. It's also an unexpected turn, which is why it's a twist. So real quick, the first easy one is where you just have a kind of evil character. This is like Iago in Othello. It's just basically the devil character. I don't personally like this one for fiction because I like my villains to be really three-dimensional, so you can't just have a bad guy who's just bad all the time for no reason. But you can make it more believable by giving them some tragic backstory. So maybe they've just been hurt in the past, or they had a bad upbringing, so now they just want to burn everything down. And that can sort of work as long as eventually you give some context, at the end of the book or whenever, at the end of the 3rd book, you kind of show, and this is often like the villain's grand speech about why he's doing all of this. And that's okay, where you basically just have a bad character. Another really good character is John, I think his name is, John McHenry or something from the 100. He's not a bad guy, he's just kind of a dick. He's kind of an asshole who's always out for himself. So it's just the pure survival instinct where you have a character who just always puts himself first and makes the best deal that he can, or is always out to, he's also just very practical and pragmatic. Usually the heroes of a story are nonsensical because it's always an impossible goal. For the change to happen, the goal has to be impossible. The heroes are always like, well, it's worth it for truth or justice or whatever, some universal theme. It's worth it to put ourselves at risk to accomplish the goal. The smart, practical, intelligent character probably comes off as an asshole because he has self-preservation and he knows, like, this is a stupid plan. The chances of this are really low. I'm going to hedge my bets and make some other, opportunities, or I'm going to be willing to make a deal with the enemy or somebody else, even if it foils my allies or the protagonist, because it's just a safer bet, the smarter plan. They're more reality-based. So it's also possible where it's just a personality thing, where they're just, the careful, smart characters, and that kind of turns them into being a dick or an asshole. Another one is where they have a deep grudge and it's a revenge plot. So the hero, something the hero did or the hero's allies did, or maybe even the hero's father or something did a long time ago, brought them up as this hatred or rage against whatever the hero represents, and they just want to burn it all down. Specifically, it's personal against the hero or the hero's forces, where they are just doing the bad things because they don't really care about the overarching, like, universal stakes or drama. They just want to hurt the protagonist because they feel like the protagonist has instantly hurt them. There's some loud noise behind me, I don't know what it is, but I'm going to keep recording anyway, now that it gets really louder. Okay, so I was saying, it can be a revenge plot, and sometimes the person who does the bad stuff, who betrays the hero, will eventually be redeemed because eventually they do something to make up for, they feel bad. Their whole life was conditioned for this revenge, but then they got to meet and know the protagonist and become friends with them or fall in love with them. It depends how you're playing that relationship. But the closer that relationship the more it's going to hurt when the betrayal comes. So they can develop feelings, or they can start to sympathize with the hero, but they can do the bad thing anyway and foil the protagonist's plans, and then eventually make up for it or redeem themselves. This can also work really well if they are the son or daughter of somebody else who's determined on revenge. That way, or like their people, like they represent their people, and they're counting on them to foil the protagonist's plans. They have this secret mission. And so while they're, starting to have doubts about the plan because they have now grown and they've explored this new world and gotten to be friends with some of the allies or sympathize with the protagonists, they may be starting to doubt themselves, but their parents or their society or whoever they came from can put more pressure on them and force them to make a choice between this is who you are, you're one of us. Why are you sympathizing with this, other person who took everything from us? So that can work really well, where you show the doubt, but they have to go through with it because of external forces that are critical to their core identity. And the other one that works really well, that I personally like the best probably, is just that you have very strong opinionated characters who have different ideas about the best path forward. I like to do this in the form of love triangles, where even if there's not strictly a romance, there are just three main characters who represent three completely different races or ideologies or whatever. So they each have people backing them, forcing them to make certain choices, and they are teamed up working together on a common problem, but they all want to do the best for their own side. So they have to make a choice between their national identity or race identity and their relationship with their allies. So this is a betrayal that costs the most because, it hurts the protagonist because they weren't expecting this betrayal, but it also hurts the betrayer because they care about the protagonist. They feel terrible about this decision, but they feel like they have no choice but to side with their core identity. So they're not, betraying because they're evil or they just want to make a mess of things. They're betraying because they feel like the stakes are so great. Like they can either support the protagonist or their race will be destroyed, their country will be destroyed. In one of mine, I have the mermaids against the witches against the humans. So, if there's a war coming, do these allies, do they give up their people to help somebody else's people because they care about the protagonist? My protagonist usually fits somewhere in the middle and she's trying to balance the two sides or stop the war. But at some point, there's going to be a critical moment when, maybe they thought it would all work out. Maybe they had a plan that was supposed to work out, but then it just doesn't work. And now the stakes are unexpectedly higher, which forces an impossible decision. So my favorite parts of betrayal, same with protagonist stakes, is having an impossible decision that forces them to change. So they're not acting because they're evil, they're acting because the stakes are just impossible. They can't make a good decision. Somebody has to lose. So each character has to decide what it's worth to them, or what matters to them the most, what they're gonna be willing to do or to act on. And hopefully you can present it in a way where it's still noble for the betrayers. So they betray the heroes, but they're doing it because they're good people. All the allies at heart, they may not be, supporting the villain or trying to cause destruction or anything like that. They just, because of who they are, because of who their personality is, they are committed to acting in a way that they perceive is the best, most moral option. This can also work really well if they have a codified ethical structure or moral structure. So it's a question of, do they go against their own system of right and wrong, good and evil, and embrace a little bit of chaos? If they're real strict rule followers, if they've been bred or raised to be a good person, but they are forced to break their own rules in order to either help the protagonist or help their own people. It puts them in a difficult moral quandary, which is the point. The point of conflict, of big stakes action drama, is to force your characters into going against themselves, enabling themselves, dissolving their core identities, and evolving into something fresh and new. I just did a big write-up of the Snyder's Cut Justice League movie because they break some of this stuff down really well. Not about betrayal specifically. I don't remember if there was a good example of betrayal. I think there was, but I can't remember right now. I think there was a pretty strong betrayal where somebody betrays, one of the core team betrays the others. But even if not, my point was there's a place in the movie where the Flash previously had set up his rule, where you set up a rule early to establish what needs to be broken, and the Flash has a rule where he never goes faster than the speed of light because weird things happen. So that's the core rule that has to be set up in the beginning so that we can show how much the ending matters, where he's forced to break his rule. And he says out loud deliberately, now is the time to break my rule, and he has to be forced to go faster than the speed of light, which is really risky, to wind back time and save the day. He's the only character who can do that. I wrote that stuff down for my book on nonfiction, which I'm putting out soon, but I might put it somewhere on writethemagic.com also, just because it's a pretty good breakdown of contemporary media, which I like to do. It's a lot of fun. I have a few different movie breakdowns, but specifically about betrayal stuff. I hope that this gave you some suggestions about what type of betrayal you can use in your fiction and why it matters and why it can be really powerful. Let me know if you have any questions about writing in general. I'll make a video for you. Don't forget to subscribe. Thanks. Bye-bye.